Good evening. I have 6:30. I'll call the meeting to order. This first item on the agenda is a workshop is capital projects. So public works proposed projects for 2023. I believe Ann is here to speak with us, maybe Ty as well.
So what you have in front of you is kind of what myself and the public works staff have put together regarding projects. The budget that you see in all cases is not always available. Ted had provided me budget numbers, and then with some items he said, do not plan any projects out of this. So I will kind of talk about that as we start moving forward. Okay. The sewer department budget, lift station operations is $150,000. He had intended this for lift station repairs, the SCADA system upgrade to the Rock Road lift station, as well as a grinder pump. Now you'll have to excuse me a little bit. A lot of this was prepared under the previous public works director, who is now no longer here. So myself and Marty have been kind of scrambling, going through paperwork and documents. I have been out of that world since halfway through of last year. And so we're kind of trying to put stuff together. We know what was planned, but not necessarily all the numbers. So with that being said, wastewater system maintenance and repair, $300,000. This is for emergency repairs and meter installs. Ted did say do not plan any projects out of this line. And then we have the sanitary sewer improvements. There was $300,000 scheduled. This is being taken up by the cured in place pipe in the Aurora Park, which has already been started. So in a nutshell, we have about $150,000 to work with. The projects that we would like to do, the SCADA system upgrades, should be about $11,000. The new grinder pump in the Harding Street lift station, about $70,000. This is those pumps that have a little cutter head on them. It chews all the rags up and sends them through. Harding is the last one that we do not have any grinder pumps in. All of the other lift stations, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, have the grinder pumps. I'm thinking that the Sunflower may not, but not 100% sure on that. The other thing that we also like to do every year is clean our lift stations 3 to 4 times a year. Kind of we watch them as needed. That cuts down on the grease buildup in the lift station. It's not required by KDH&E, but it makes them very happy because we're doing what we can to maintain our lift station. As grease builds up, you can get a grease cap that will be inside the lift station that can float or not float and really kind of harm your lift station operation. So that is something that we definitely want to continue doing. The other piece was replace the lining in 5 sanitary sewer manholes along 53rd Street that are between the Rock Road lift station force main, where the force main ends, and the next sewer line starts. So there's 5 manholes there. We're anticipating that work will cost about $10,000. I don't have a specific cost on that. I kind of guesstimated from costs that we've had 3 years ago and upped it a little bit. I'm hoping that's on the high side, but kind of that's where we're at. We have not done any proposals for this. And I guess kind of the last thing that I need to mention is our cured in place pipelining project. They have televised all the lines. I think there was 5 to 7 locations that they needed point repairs in. There was most of the lift stations they could get the camera through, most of the manholes and sewer lines they could get the camera through. There was one, they tried it from one way, they tried it from the other way, and they were blocked on both sides. So we did send out proposals on that. We had one proposal returned. I do not have the costs with me tonight, but we are prepared to bring that to you next Tuesday at your council meeting. That is something that is a little urgent because they're getting started lining other pipes in that neighborhood. So the sooner we can get these repaired, the sooner they can get that project finished out. So that's And I apologize, I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but that's the sanitary sewer. Do you have any questions on that sewer?
So this
proposed
is
plan of
the
work?
last of the cure in place, right?
That is correct.
I thought it was, and I was a little surprised it wasn't done yet, but we contracted it. It's just that they're still working on it. I get
Right.
it. Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that. The other is you're looking at a SCADA for a lift station.
Correct.
You don't have a SCADA that manages all the lift stations. You just have individual ones. Is that what you
The,
have?
the SCADA manages, there's SCADA at all the lift stations and they all come into the same port, but would be replacing the SCADA equipment at the Rock Road lift station.
Okay.
It's been getting, it's my understanding it's getting old and just needs to be replaced. It doesn't have all the functionality at some of the other lift stations.
So you might want to chat with Tony Keentz at CCUA, because they just put out an RFP for a new SCADA system. Now they put it out for the water, not for sewer, but
Okay.
Similar systems, right? And when we were at the League of Kansas Municipalities conference, there was a couple of vendors there that had some interesting ideas that looked like they might be less expensive, but I don't know that.
Sure.
Because I didn't get any pricing from them.
Right. And that's something that we can certainly talk about. Our SCADA system is proprietary. It was RW Vote in Kansas City that put it together for us. So if we were to go out to other vendors, it would be replacing the entire system. It would not just be replacing one portion of it. If council wishes us to start looking into full-scale replacements, we're happy to do that. KRWA, Kansas Rural Water Conference, is coming up at the end of the month. Both myself and John will be there. It will be a good time to talk to folks. We're happy to do that if council would wish, but it is not just a replacement of the Rock Road lift station. So it's not going to be the $11,000. It's probably going to be more 150,000, if not more.
Well, I was under the impression that these were much more plug and play and not so proprietary that you're kind of stuck with this one supplier.
Right.
With the system you have, that we have today. I don't know if it makes any sense, but might be something to just pursue to see.
Okay.
You know, I can't say it does. I don't
Sure.
have any numbers.
And yeah, and this is not something that we have obtained a bid yet from RW Vote. So it's certainly a good time. I can have John talk to the vendors at KRWA, because this is not something I'm terribly well versed in to be able to talk intelligently about, but he's much more well versed in it. So I can certainly ask him to start looking around.
It would be nice to know a little bit if we're going to start having failures, what it would cost to replace the whole system.
Yeah, I can,
Clearly not something for this year, but just to keep in the back pocket.
Yeah, we can certainly do that. From my recollection, I think we've been replacing these kind of one at a time through the last several years. But we can definitely start contacting some folks at KRWA and have them come out and take a look at what we've got and kind of give us some ballpark numbers. And then if that's something that council wishes to pursue, then we can go ahead and get more definite quotes. So we can certainly look into it.
I just don't like it when we're tied to a vendor, especially on software or hardware type stuff. It's like,
I understand totally.
And with that said, though, do you have a feel for how much of the system needs to be updated? I mean, if we've updated 3/4 of it, it seems like it maybe be a futile effort to ask about full replacement costs when we probably have stuff that could last another 10 years.
Sure.
Like, what do you have a feel for that? Like, would it be worth our time to?
At this point, to my knowledge, it is just the one station that needs to be updated.
Right.
I think the rest of them are working very well. I don't think I haven't heard any complaints. I was kind of wish Marty was here tonight to help discuss that, but this is kind of John's area. So I think we're good for the most part, but we're certainly happy we're going to be at KRWA anyway. Vendors like to talk to folks. So we can certainly just kind of at least have an introductory conversation, see what they have to say, and maybe bring one or two out and see see what they think. Even if it's just a ballpark number, 100,000, 200,000, what would it take? At least that gives you guys some idea on kind of where we want to go from here.
Well, and how often they fail too. I mean, if we're only losing one a year, it may be cheaper to keep replacing them. But
Right.
if they are going to start failing more often, then we really need a replacement policy.
Exactly. And from my recollection, the issues that we have are generally lightning strikes. And even though our facilities are protected, they have lightning monitors and
Ground rods.
ground wads. It's still kind of one of the most common failures on them. And then we have RW Vote come out and then they get it back going. But it's usually just kind of a maintenance thing or one small piece of the system. It's not the entirety of the SCADA system at that lift station.
That's good to know, because I was afraid the parts were wearing out or gases were getting in there and deteriorating them or something like that, that they had a planned lifetime of 10 years or something like that.
Yeah. And the lifetime, I'm not sure, but yeah, it's generally a pretty decent system. It's just when we get hit by lightning, it takes things down. So
The other thought I had was with the Oliver lift station. I assume that new lift station is being installed with that same SCADA system, or does that?
that is correct.
Yeah. So it's all matching.
Yep. Yeah. If I would request that we do not piecemeal anything together. If we're going to start changing things around, we're going to need to do the whole piece just for consistency and ease of operations.
Makes sense.
So it looks like everything you want is going to fit in the $150,000 budget for right now. So
Correct.
there's really not much issue here.
Correct.
Okay.
So moving on, does anybody else have questions on the sewer? All right, moving on to the water system. We have 300,000 for water system maintenance and repair and 300,000 for water system improvements. Ted asked that the 300,000 for water system maintenance and repair is for emergency repairs and meter installs and not to plan any projects from this line. So we essentially have 300,000 to work with. I've listed several projects on here. The top project would be the water line replacement from on Hanover from Auburn to Janesville. This one, we've had several water main breaks in the past year, and it's bumped ahead of the other two that were on our priority list from 2022. We also had a citizen, some of the breaks have occurred in his yard. So we've had the citizen come and ask, will you please do something about this line? So we are planning on, we would like to do that this year. We have sent bids out to 5 companies. We had 2 return the bids that will be presented to you next Tuesday as well for consideration. The other priority project is the water test stations. Every month we have to do water testing by KDH&E. And this is to ensure that there is no bacteria in the water and the chlorine samples are at an acceptable level. We have 10 designated testing zones in the city. So you can think of them quadrants, blocks. Within each testing zone, we have to take 5 samples. So 5 times 10 is 50. And then those have to rotate every other year. Or it's a year or month. It might be month, but I've got it in the report. I'm sorry. It's just kind of been a day. So we have to alternate those. So it's getting harder and harder to get people at home that are willing to let us come inside, because we have to get it from a kitchen sink, from a faucet. We can't just get it from the outside tap. So it's getting more and more difficult to get into homes to be able to collect these samples. We do use businesses and the rec center, our city hall, the public works facility whenever we can, but don't always have that availability. When we're getting ready to increase the number of tests we need to another 5 zones, so we'll have a total of 15 zones. So that just increases the number of test kits or test spots available. Wichita has installed these little test stations in in a lot of their neighborhoods to get around this problem. We've talked with Wichita. It's very handy for them. They just open up the test station, turn a tap, get the water that they need for the sampling. They don't have to go into anybody's home. They don't have to worry about finding folks. It's much easier. So that's what the additional 200,000 is for. And that's kind of the high side estimate. We did get a few bids on this, but that's the high side estimate. Kind of, I'm still working with Public Works staff to see how many we actually need. If we don't need all 150 now, can we install 100? Can we install 50 as a trial to make sure that we know how things operate, to make sure that we know where we're at? This changeover in staff has, it's taken a lot of time for us kind of, and we're still working together on some things. But that would be kind of my second priority because of the difficulty we're having getting into homes. Need to have these test stations just to make it much easier for staff. It won't take them as much time. We know where all the test stations are. You don't have to coordinate with homeowners, interrupt your day, et cetera, to get the test samples.
So these are little stations that you just tap the water line and you got a permanent tap that you can open up
Correct.
anytime.
Correct.
There's actually a City of Wichita one like right out at 53rd and Rock. It's a blue post sticking out of the ground. That's their test stations.
It's about
And-
3-4 feet in the
and we're-
air and maybe 6
You're gonna
inches
make our
around.
neighborhoods look ugly with those little stands like that?
And we're really not that far behind. City of Wichita did their first round a couple of years ago, like a couple hundred at a time they've been
Mhm.
doing because they've got a lot more test stations, like thousands of them to put in.
Right.
But
Yeah. So, I mean,
if you want to see one, there's one right there.
Part of this is being driven by new development, right? Can't we put a bunch of these test stations in as part of the water line installs?
we can put some of them in as part of the water line installs, but the majority of them are in the existing city. So we've got the 10 zones. So we've got to get the 5 to 10 locations in each zone first, and then we can also add them around as those come up. We do have maps of where each zone is that's been approved by KDH&E, and so that is something that we can definitely do as we're adding new subdivisions. Add
So
one or
is the
two.
200,000 just for the existing part of Bel Air, or is that
That's
including what we anticipate for new
that would be
development?
that would be 200,000 for the 150 test stations. So that would be for everything, the brand new plus the existing. It was, I think, about 1,500 per test station, 1,500 to 2,000. So my math is not adding up here. But that's what we're looking for. I would be comfortable if we put in 100. I mean, just to get us through, and then we can certainly start adding. And as these new subdivisions come online, I'd like to make sure that we're comfortable using what we've got.
Yeah.
But
I think it's appropriate to do a test like you're suggesting.
Mhm.
But if the test is successful, I would think that maybe we should put that in our building codes or something, that new developments have to install these test stations as part of the water system.
yeah, and it's a pretty nominal cost, so it's
Right.
not.
But then it's done. You don't have to go back and
Yeah,
think about it after the fact. And what are we doing there?
right.
Okay. It can all be part of the plan.
Exactly. So if council's comfortable with 100, that's what I would like to see. If council would prefer us go in with more like 50 and just test it and maybe come back this fall or early next year with the rest. I believe this is something that Marty thought that our staff could do, so it wouldn't be hired out. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. But I know that the quote that we had was for whatever he wanted done, if it was us install or have a contractor install. But it was that kind of complete quote.
Okay, the big thing that bothers me is you're already over the $300,000 budgeted to spend before you even got to this item.
Well,
So I
we'd
don't-
have,
where are we
yeah,
going to get the money from?
we can do less. And that would, if we go with 100, then that knocks the 200,000 down, which brings it more back into the 300,000 range.
But if you do these 3 water line replacements, that's already over 300,000,
But
or
we
each
weren't-
$100,000.
Yeah, that was not my 2 priority projects was that I've presented was the Hanover water line and these water and the water test stations. I haven't
Which is the
even,
first one.
Yeah, I haven't discussed the other two water lines. Those were just, they're
Okay.
on there as
Priorities.
as priorities and tracking purposes, but for the purpose of presenting to you and what we're specifically asking for funds for, it was the Hanover and the test stations.
Okay, it seems to me that we should be prioritizing the water lines, especially given the break we had just this week, and we have a break every couple of weeks, it seems like. So that just seems like a higher item to me. I know it's inconvenient to get your tests, but it's really inconvenient when somebody didn't have water for 8 or 9 hours.
So the Hanover line is in response to a particular line that's been breaking.
That
And
is
you've had
correct.
If I
is
understood right, there
correct.
you had like 2 breaks within 3 feet of each other or something like that. I don't really remember.
That is
exactly.
correct.
But is
The-
that a steel line or what is that line?
It's a cast iron
Cast
line.
iron line. And so you're replacing it with a PVC? Is that-
Correct.
Okay.
The other two lines, we did have several breaks in that area, and that was generally because the fire department was out testing their lines. We have met with the fire department on multiple occasions, said, please slowly open the valves, slowly close the valves. But it's kind of a race to see how quickly we can open the valves. And then when you have 2 fire hydrants flushing at the same time, it's an issue. Our staff has since taken over the testing of the testing of the fire hydrants, and that will not happen. So that's why we are more comfortable pushing those other 2 into the next year. Still important, but in our opinion, it's not as urgent as the Hanover and the test stations.
How much does it cost for each one of those repairs?
It depends on whether city staff can do that or if we have to contract it out. I don't believe we have contracted out a repair for a while, so it's just materials and then any overtime that's incurred.
Probably a couple $1,000, $5,000-$10,000 at most, probably.
I would say 2 to 3.
Right. If you hire it out, it's probably in the 5 to 10 range.
Probably closer. And most of the time we do have staff on site assisting with whomever comes in.
I saw something at another city where they took the tack that if they had to fix a break, they also fixed like 20 feet on either side of it. Would that be something we should consider?
With some of these old lines,
Or, yeah,
it
like, does it
doesn't
really matter?
necessarily make a difference. We usually just put a clamp or a large, 2 to 3 foot sleeve over the top of the break so it encapsulates the whole area. If we were replacing 2-3 sticks of pipe, then that would require more fittings, more time to be down. It wouldn't be as quick to get the water main back up and going again. It's not a bad idea. It's just by clamping it, we're able to get it up quicker.
Okay, and then the next question is, should we be doing the same thing with the water lines that we did with streets? Make a map and just start a plan on replacing like the steel lines that you're talking about?
We do.
Whether they're breaking or not,
Yeah,
just go in
sure.
there and fix them.
We do have, Tim, one of our former employees, did have a map and a list of lines put together. We are slowly working our way through that list. It's mostly the 4-inch old cast iron lines. And then that gets jumped with, those priorities get changed every year and then kind of jumped based on what we've had issues with. So the Hanover line was actually 3rd in line to get replaced, but it's been moved up to 1st because we've had several breaks.
So Ann, if we wanted to do some of the test stations, what if we went ahead and did 2, like Hanover and Kruger or Hanover and Harding, and then whatever was left, we put in some of the test sites because we couldn't do, like John was saying, 3, doing all 3 puts us over. So what if we did 2 and then filled in the rest with some tests?
Yeah, we could certainly do that.
Try to maybe get half of the test stations or the third
Yeah.
half.
Or get you some, get your testing done
Right.
of the
Get us
test
started.
program and we'll know next year better information. I like that idea.
I like that idea as
Have
well.
harder costs on the test stations too.
Yeah, we can certainly do that. We have not sent out bids on Kruger from 46 to Harding, but we can get that done and probably have it to you by the 2nd meeting in April.
Are any of these under the street or are they all on the parking? Do you know?
I do not know.
I'm just
I'm
wondering if we have to end
assuming-
up tearing up a street and then we have to pay for the street too.
Yeah, I'm assuming that they're all on the side of the road. So I'm not 100% sure, but in Bel Air, that's generally where the water lines are.
We just did some street repairs over in that area, that neighborhood, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
So hopefully it's, they'll have to turn the streets out.
Right.
Well, I can't remember what that one street is, but it's over there and it's all concrete now because they did have to replace a major line that went right down the middle of the street.
Gotcha.
That was
Is that
bad.
Batten?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we did not
Same
replace
neighborhood,
that
but
water line,
Different
but
street.
we did get the street.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
all right. Any other questions on water? All right, moving on to storm sewer. We have about 446,000 for improvements. There's two primary improvements that really need to be made this year. Some of these, I guess I'll start with the first one. It is the bridge, and I use quotes because it's really a series of 3 culverts, but the span of the culverts, the proximity of the culverts to each other are enough that KDOT considers it a bridge. So it is on our bridge system inventory. It is in poor shape. PEC has been coming out to inventory our bridges, to inspect our bridges. And this one is on an annual inspection because of its shape. We did apply for a KDOT bridge grant that would have replaced the bridge at 45th and Rock. It would be on 45th Street, just west of Rock. And then this one would be decommissioned. It would be replaced with a box culvert. It is in the plan for the 45th Street improvements to replace this with a box culvert. However, KDOT will be coming through and doing load ratings. How much load can the bridge officially carry? And PEC, who does those load ratings, said that would be posted and it would be closed. I don't
Hang on
want
a
to
minute,
close.
I'm confused. I thought you were talking about the culverts on Oliver and 45th, and now you're talking about something in the middle of 45th?
No, it is Oliver and 45th.
These
So
go under
it's-
all over.
Right.
Okay, well, it's the way you were talking, it sounded like it was under 45th. so I was-
There's
Three big
another
culverts.
one on 45th Street, just west of Rock, that was included in our bridge system application. But the one that is in your report is on
Okay,
Oliver,
okay.
just
I
south.
missed the distinction there.
No,
I think these are the 3 large culverts.
That is
They're
correct.
go underneath Oliver, right there at 45th Street,
That
just
is-
south of 45th.
Okay,
Yes,
I'm with you.
that is
I
correct.
just
Big concrete
got
head
lost
wall and
someplace there.
Mhm.
Wings with the
Yep. Exactly. So when talking to PEC, they said they would have to close the road because of the condition, particularly of the middle culvert. So I asked them, is there anything that we can do? They initially, when we were out on site, they said, well, maybe you can put a super slab on top, which is a slab of concrete that will help distribute the weight over the culverts. And then after going back to the office, talking to some of their bridge engineers, they said, no, I don't want you disturbing any of the ground that is on top of that. So now their thought is if we can get the drainage to work, close that middle culvert, fill it full of flowable fill, put some caps on the end, and do a little bit of grading work on the upstream end to get the water to now flow into those 2 exterior culverts. Those are in decent enough shape that will carry us through. It does 2 things. We don't have to close the road because we can get to both ends. And it doesn't need to be posted because of the poor condition. If we close the middle culvert, it's no longer a bridge. So that's a really good thing. Garver is working on the design for 45th Street as well as the hydraulics. I have asked them to look at this particular location, focus on that as soon as possible. Can we survive with just the 2 culverts? What would happen if we blocked that middle culvert? What's going to happen? We've got a lot of area there. We can back up water a little bit, but what's the ramifications? Garver has not gotten back to me yet on that point, but in the interest of time, it is on my list. I'm assuming because it's not a whole lot of work, it's filling that pipe, it's putting some concrete bollards on the end, or not bollards, but plugs on the end. assuming about $30,000 worth of work. Not a whole lot, but definitely well worth it. It's going to carry us through to the time when we actually go through and do the 45th Street project and replace that structure in its entirety.
What's the diameter of those culverts?
I believe they're 36 inches.
Okay.
They're not big enough to walk through, but it's
Okay.
30 to 36.
Yeah,
I never
just
got
like
down
they're-
in there, but I thought they were bigger than that, but okay, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Could we shove something else inside of them that would make them work and not collapse?
No,
A sleeve?
Well, basically, but maybe with concrete around it or something as you pushed it through, you filled in
middle-
the gap with concrete.
the middle culvert, the corrugated metal pipe is disintegrating. It's rusting. There's not a whole lot of it there. It's pushing down from the top and raising up from the bottom.
It's already squishing.
So
Okay.
it's already squished due to the pressure, and there's really nothing we can do with any sort of structural integrity to save that pipe for the time being.
So
John, to
that
answer,
that
your
brings-
question.
just a second, that brings the question up then.
Just answer
Instead
the
of just the banding in it, are we going to stuff that middle one with something?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it'll be plugged with either flowable fill or sand. The ends will be capped, probably drill a hole in the top so we can fill it full with flowable fill or sand. And then
So it
it'll
becomes
be,
structurally sound.
It's like a
cap.
lean
Okay.
concrete, yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
There are alternative products that you could put in there to line it, but it won't, most of them won't give you any structural value. They're just there to protect the pipe from a corrosion. I know of one product, they have a screw pipe that is popular for culverts, but I don't know that it's really designed to fit in a pipe that's that badly deteriorated already and is
Yeah.
that oblong or has become so compressed. I don't think it would be a good fit.
Not this middle pipe. And with the other two exterior pipes, if we were not planning on reconstructing 45th Street along with this structure in the next several years, it would definitely be something to look at for longevity. But since we're already planning on getting this into the WAMPO, hoping to, and then replacing this structure whole scale, it's trying to get by as cheap as possible and as easy and as quick as possible.
Okay.
So Ann, who would be doing the fill-in work? Would that be in-house or would you bid that?
No, we
out?
would bid that out.
So if you do this, is there a bucket in WAMPO that this would fall under as a bridge repair replacement when we actually go in and do the real work of rebuilding? Because I know that, like you said earlier, you made an application for bridge replacements and a grant application and you weren't successful, but I do know, but WAMPO has those different buckets. I don't know if this is one that they have a bucket for bridges.
It is not,
Uh-huh.
to my knowledge,
Okay.
but it is something that gives you a check mark and a little gold star on your application. We're removing a bridge from the bridge inventory. KDOT likes that, especially bridges in poor condition.
Well, you're on
Um,
the TAC, so.
Yeah, I'm on
WAMPO,
the selection
The
committee.
selection committee, yeah.
I think I'm
But-
understanding that doing this effort will actually make it not a bridge anymore, so it won't be eligible for bridge grants anyway.
Exactly. And that's why when we had submitted the other application, it was actually for the 45th and Rock Road Bridge, but we were using this money as matching funds that the city would have paid for anyway to match KDOT's funds on the other bridge.
Okay.
And have we heard the results of that grant?
We did not get it.
Okay.
We were not successful. Which I was really bummed because we had talked with KDOT ahead of time and it had what I thought was a very good application, but we're not.
Yeah.
They don't
okay.
seem to like us.
Lots of need.
Well,
There's lots
I
of need.
think,
Maybe that opinion's changing. but-
I think that's the thing we've got to do is do that in intermediate repair because we know we're going to rebuild this thing and no sense of putting a lot of money into it, but do what you got to do to keep it active and alive.
Right.
I agree.
And if for some
I just had
reason,
those questions before I could agree.
I know. And if for some reason Garver comes back and says, no, those two outside culverts will not carry the drainage, then we'll be back to the drawing board and trying to figure something out. And it may be a case of we're just replacing that area now after Woodlawn's opened up.
I
And
hate to shut Oliver down, but Garver's going to be planning a bridge there anyway, right?
they're going to be planning a box culvert that is not large enough to be considered a
Alder
bridge.
Bridge. Okay.
The magic number is 20 feet. So if you're 19 feet, 9 inches, you're
you go.
not a bridge.
3 inches shy.
So I am 100% confident we will be able to get it underneath that bridge length. So it's just a matter of what can we do now and what can, what effort is it going to take?
You said these were like 36-inch culverts now, right?
Correct.
So there's only 3 of those. That's only 9 feet. How does that even qualify as a bridge now?
Because you've got the width of the culvert, and I'm guessing 36. I can't remember. It may be 42. You've got the width of the culvert. There's a couple feet in between each culvert, and then the culvert, and then a couple feet in between and the culvert. So from the beginning opening of the one to the beginning opening of the other is 20 feet, maybe 21. I can't remember.
KDOT
So-
spec on it's kind of weird too. When you have multiple pipes, how they factor that. It's not quite as easy as a bridge. When you have culvert pipes, they classify it kind of differently. And it's all about how the soil and the loading above is transferred to the ground below. So it's more complicated than that. But
And
it's
by-
KDOT's rules,
Yes.
KDOT's spec.
By taking out that middle culvert, the other 2 culverts are not close enough to be considered a bridge. So that's where kind of get around that.
Sounds like a good plan. Hopefully Garver can come back and say that the detention time in the pond or whatever would create there is long enough so we don't have to worry about it. So, but I
Exactly.
appreciate you coming up with this option
We're-
because it's
we're-
much better than having to replace it right now.
We're trying. We're trying. The other kind of bonus thing is Marty had wanted to go in there and regrade the bottom of that bowl anyway. And this would take care of that because we have to regrade the bottom anyway to get the water flowing to those 2 outside culverts. So kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
But that is a retention pond area right there, just to the west of that, right?
Right. I don't know. I'm assuming it was designed as a retention pond. I don't think there's a whole lot of fall from the box culvert that's coming underneath 45th Street to the pipes that go under
Okay.
Oliver. But
So it'd flood the ditch with the pond.
There's-
But
yeah,
Yeah.
there's some space there. I'm just not sure how much. So that's why I've asked Garver to take a good look at it because I don't want to jeopardize
Yeah.
anybody's property or get things
No, but it's a good
full.
sized area and those houses set up pretty high along there.
right.
so.
What
But it's
Garver-
what are we backing up?
I don't think we
Beyond
want a
that.
small pond there because that'll just be mosquito habitat.
Right.
So-
Don't need
It'd be
that.
but it's only going to be a detention. So during a storm, it would slowly meter out. That's
Correct.
kind of the purpose of it. But even if Garver came back and said, we need to dig that down another 2 feet to get the detention time, that's a much better solution than having to replace the bridge right now,
Exactly.
in my mind.
Yeah.
If you're already going to be in there doing dirt work.
Because the bridge will qualify under WAMPO's 80-20 split. So I'd rather get somebody else to pay for 80% of it than us pay for the entire thing. But
Right.
Let Garver figure that out.
exactly. So the other project for the storm sewer is on Rock Road, just north of 53rd Street. There is a very old wooden box culvert up there. As you're driving from LaSalle south along Rock Road to 53rd Street, you feel a ka-thunk. It's not over the box. It's just immediately to the south. The box is actually in good condition, but soil is starting to migrate away from the box. So I'm guessing when we have rains, it's probably infiltrating into the box and going away. So that is a bit of a concern. It's something that I've been watching for the last several years. I've had PEC come out and look at it every time they're on site doing a bridge inspection. Just please buy me some time. Please tell me it's still good. This time they said, yeah, you probably want to do something about that. So coming to you, we had talked about doing it earlier, but what the plan that we had talked about would require guardrail and like 50 to 80 feet of guardrail on each side because of the drop off. Guardrail's ridiculously expensive, and it was going to be 50 to 80,000 if I remember correctly, just for the guardrail, not for anything else. So kind of said pause to that. went back. It's like, it's not an urgent need of replacement. We're getting towards it now. Have been talking with both PEC and Garver, and the recommendation was to come in with 3 30-inch reinforced concrete boxes or concrete culverts. 30 inches is the maximum size you can get without needing guardrail. We can put the 3 in there and not get to bridge length. They're going to have to be spaced out a little bit, but we can get them in there without much of a problem. This is something that I think we really need to do this year, probably this summer towards the fall. Because it's on 53rd, or because it's on Rock Road, it's a little bit more of a major road, but we can divert traffic on LaSalle. Coming in from K254 on Rock, you can divert along LaSalle around those neighborhoods, past the school, and come back out on 53rd and then get back to Rock. So it's a fairly easy detour. I would imagine once we get the concrete pipes in, it should take maybe a month to install. It should be a fairly quick process. But it is something that I see as not urgent, needs to be done tomorrow, but urgent as it needs to get done this year. So that's my other proposed project for the storm sewer. We have a few places around town that do. There's another one on 45th that will be getting replaced with the 45th Street project. And then once we kind of finish talking about Aurora Park and figure out what we want to do there, that is another place that some of these funds can get used for. The city has dedicated some of the funds to the piece of Aurora Park that we will be paving, as well as the Cozy Drive, some of those storm sewer improvements. So kind of wanting to preserve the fund and just handle kind of the emergent things.
So my only concern on the Rock Road issue is that this is an Integra issue that we're going to be looking at if the CHIPS funding comes through. And that will probably be a major rebuild, the whole length from 54 to maybe 37th. I don't know exactly. I don't have that in mind. And so replacing these now doesn't make them suitable for that rebuild.
Right.
And they just have to be torn right out. That is, I think, it's a 2-year deal that we have to get all that infrastructure done in. So I'm a little hesitant about saying, let's go with that. I understand the need because I know you've brought this up before in years past, because I remember talking about this. I don't know if there's anything you can do as an interim that's less expensive and less invasive, but I just wonder if there is, because I hate to spend a lot of money on this thing and then just have to tear it out if 6 months to a year because it's not adequate to do what we need to do for the Integra project.
Right.
Why would it not be adequate if rebuilding the road? What would make it not usable again? Would it be too high?
It depends on what we plan on doing with the road. And I had talked with Ty as I was putting this together, and he said, just kind of ignore the Integra projects for now. And so that's why I'm bringing this to you, mainly to get it on your kind of radar, get it to your attention. It's really going to depend on what we hear on Integra in the next couple of months as far as where we move forward. Like I said, it's not an urgent, get it done yesterday type of thing, but I'd like to see maybe something this year. We'll definitely continue to monitor the situation. If things get worse, I'll definitely be working with Garver or PEC, be reaching out for assistance on suggestions, like I did on the one under Oliver. But depending on what happens with Rock Road, if that is a curb and gutter road, eventually with the Integra, that road is going to drop. Because with curb and gutter, you want to take all the water and bring it onto the road into storm sewer, so all the water goes underground to get out. That's what's happening with Woodlawn right now. With 53rd Street from Woodlawn to Oliver, that is remaining a mat road, so those remain high, so water can shed off the road into the ditches, and then the storm water is carried through the ditches. So with the mayor's comment that it may not be adequate, it may not be in the correct elevation. If we end up doing curb and gutter the entire way on Rock Road, then that's probably going to be dropping, and then it's not at the correct elevation. So then we'd have to be redoing it. And the
But we
mayor's right
don't know
on.
the answer to that question. Is that what you're actually telling me, is we don't know what the elevation would be to get
We haven't
under?
designed it yet.
Yeah,
Correct.
We don't know.
the research hasn't been done for it.
That is correct. So I'm working on an RFP for a overall study of the roads within belt, kind of around the Integra property, the Rock Road, Webb Road, 53rd, 45th, kind of what we're looking at as far as traffic loading, not only with the initial phase, but also the final build out. What do these roads need for improvements? That will be coming if we've got, we're going to have to figure out how the funding is coming to pay for all these roads. And then kind of, we're going to have to decide, do we want curb and gutter? Are we happy with asphalt mat and ditches? Where those discussions, I don't believe have taken place yet because
no.
we don't
Okay.
know.
Obviously not.
Different question then. It's not sinking where the culvert is. The culvert's still good. What if we cut out the 3 or 4 feet where it's sinking, backfill that with something stable, and put asphalt on top of that? Would that not work until we know what we're going to do to the road? Would that be cheaper?
It would certainly be less expensive. It would still require closing down the road. If we continue to get more of a bump, that may be something that we end up looking at and maybe going
Urgency.
forward
Well,
with it.
I'm just,
Also
why are we replacing a culvert that's working at this point when we're thinking about totally trashing it in a year or two?
And that's where the intent is, to have a conversation and to kind of mainly to get this on your radar, get everybody thinking about it. And
I
it-
would be okay
it
putting
all-
a culvert in if we knew it was okay for the future road.
Right.
But if we're just doing emergency repair, let's really make it an emergency repair and
Sure.
not spend a fortune on it.
So,
And
and
it's-
if,
And
oh,
when-
sorry. So if hearing you correctly, we're okay. We can wait till late summer, early fall,
Correct.
but then we'll need to make a decision.
Correct.
We can wait for the CHIPS funding, probably.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And it
So-
just, it gets it on your radar so we can talk about it, have the discussion, and then we see what happens with Integra.
So let's do that. Just keep it on the radar.
Yeah.
But don't do anything until we find out what's happening with Integra and CHIPS. And then we can go from there, because that'll tell us, yeah, it's going to go and we're going to be ripping this all out, or no, we need to
I'm
go make this
hesitant to
fix.
not do anything.
Yeah.
One suggestion I had was the contractor that's going to be filling with flowable fill on Oliver. Can that same process, drill a hole, fill with flow fill, be accomplished at the same time on that box culvert, or do you not feel comfortable doing it that way on that part?
It's possible. I just don't know what's going on down there right
Right,
now.
you
I
can't
just
see it.
know
Yeah.
that we're getting a dip on the south side of that. That culvert is too tight to really get into and look at.
Right.
There's big railroad ties kind of holding up the end on both sides. So you can't, it's too small for anybody to crawl into. So with not being entirely sure, that's a good option, but
You don't know how
It's-
extensive that hole is. I mean, that's
exactly,
what's kind of scary about this, is it could be a sink. You don't know because
right.
you can't physically see it.
Yeah, that's what happened on 45th. There was a little bitty hole and they ended up replacing half of the road because it just hadn't fallen in yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you hear about that all the
So-
time. After storms, large amounts of material move, and it's just a matter of time before the hole is big enough.
Yeah.
So do we have an idea what it would cost just to rip out that little piece of dirt and pack it back in?
Depending on how much of a hole there's under there, you're maybe talking 10,000. So it would be relatively minor. But I just hesitate to do anything until it starts getting,
Okay,
Bad.
but the reason I ask that is even if we decide that we're going to rebuild that road, we have to go through the design process and the build process and everything else, and it's going to be 2 years before that's done.
correct.
And since this is already collapsing, I don't think we can wait 2 years to find out what we're doing with Integra.
Agreed. That's why I'd like to wait kind of more towards the middle to end of summer. So we hear about what's going on with Integra. And then we've kind of gone through some studies and have a much better idea what we're going to do on Rock Road. And then that'll help inform kind of the decision on what we do here. I wanted to make sure to bring it to you, get it on the radar, and make sure you understand that we're looking at our system, and we're actively trying. We're not just trying to spend money to spend money. We're trying to make repairs and make good decisions.
I mean, because one of the solutions could be that the CHIPS funding happens, we know rock road is going to be built. Maybe you start doing preliminary design and you can determine what depth. Would it be a box culvert? Would it be a pipe? And we could just replace it with that ahead of some larger road project. That could be an option.
It could be.
And we might know that by midsummer.
Right. And that's, I mean, I think
I-
Councilmember Welch is right on standpoint. We don't really want to go through and replace it right now.
Right.
But what can we do as a stopgap measure, and kind of we're watching it and just making sure you're aware of it.
How are we going to get those answers by midsummer though?
I mean, it just
Ty?
all depends on here in the CHIPS Act. And if we know that's happening, we're going to have to start moving on design on Rock Road. And so we could make a priority studying that specific spot. Is it going to need to get lowered? How wide is it going to be? And then we can get that in ahead of a full project.
But if we start that design now, we have to come up with the money to pay for the design. And right now
Yeah, I think
That's
it's a
kinda
problem.
tight.
I think it's a problem for a new day.
Yeah, we're working on several things there to try to make that happen. We've met with both Senator Moran and Senator Marshall, or Senator Moran's office and Senator Marshall, and Ron Estes' office, or well, Ron Estes himself. And there's no promises of anything because they can't promise things, but they certainly understand the need here. So does KDOT understand the need here. So if this CHIP funding comes through, there's going to be a lot of interest to make sure they support us in getting this infrastructure in place to support that factory. What's that going to look like? I don't know. I mean,
well, I'm
it's a
afraid
crystal
even
ball.
if it moves fast, it'll be the end of the year before we can have an engineering study done.
I'm thinking, and of course, again, this is just spitballing. It's not saying this is how it's going to work out, but I'm thinking probably this whole project is going to become design build. It won't be something we have time to wait for engineering to be done before you start building.
How can we not do an engineering study?
That's done all the
We
time.
will be doing an engineering
Well, the study you do, yeah, but the
But
actual
that's-
design,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
not going to give you, I mean, it'll give you the drainage basins coming in. It'll give you kind of what they think as far as 3-lane, 5-lane,
right?
curb and gutter, asphalt mat with ditches. You're going to get the general idea. But what really needs to happen is as you'd mentioned, we need to figure out what we're building before we do too much at this location to make sure we're not just tearing it out 6 months later or
Okay,
2
maybe
years later.
Maybe I need to go to school for a while, but I don't see how we can build the road if we haven't designed the road.
It'll be a design build.
Yeah.
They can,
Define that to me then, because I'm really lost. And
So-
if that's so dang easy, why didn't we do that with 53rd and 45th and Woodlawn?
so design builds they're risky because the city somewhat loses control. You hire a team of an engineer and a contractor at a price to design the road and build it. In order to do that, you've got to have an idea of what you want. Is it a 3-lane curb and gutter? Is it 2-lane asphalt mat with turn lanes? What do you want? So
So we tell them what we want instead of them telling us what they think we need.
we have the study that gives us an idea of what we want. And then we say, go design it and build it. Very simplistic terms. Then the engineer and the contractor work together to get some preliminary design done so the contractor can go out and start moving dirt. It's a somewhat tangential process that does speed things up quite a bit because you don't have to take 2 years to design it. You have KDOT review it for another 6 months, and then you go bid it and build it, which is what happened with Woodlawn. With this process, it's condensed because you don't have waiting time for bidding.
Yeah, one of
So-
the-
And KDOT is okay with doing projects like that? Because I assume they're going to be a partner on that road.
They will be worked with. I mean, we haven't decided how things are going to happen, but they will be contacted and we will be working very closely with them.
So
But
John,
I mean that they're willing to do design builds instead of the way we've done Woodlawn.
They are
John,
doing-
to answer your question,
Yes,
this is how they're doing the DeSoto project. This is how they're getting the infrastructure done in DeSoto
Yes.
on time.
Yeah.
Supposedly.
so
Like,
Mr.
hopefully.
Smith,
I was just going to comment. We have a really full agenda, and I know we're not making a decision on this tonight. I'd like to suggest we move on.
yeah, I think that's a
Good
good
idea.
suggestion. Yeah, there are a lot of moving pieces here, guys. I agree. I appreciate the information. I think that's good to go with your plan. Keep it on the back burner, but if it becomes an issue, you need to bring it up. Okay?
The last piece before you is the street department. Signs and materials, we have 12,000, snow and ice removal, 35,000, paved street repair material, 50,000, gravel street material, 10,000, street improvements, 100,000. There really is no money to expend from this fund other than kind of normal maintenance activities because of the design on 45th Street. And then the 908,000 that we're spending on the microsurfacing. So that fund has pretty much been taken care of. We will be doing our normal maintenance activities. If something needs to happen to 53rd Street before it gets rebuilt, then we will obviously come back to you, get approval on the quote for that, and go through and take care of it.
Does this fit within that GIS study plan that we put together for streets?
The 2023 streets
Yes.
have been moved to 2024 because of the cost of the work done in the planned work from 2022.
Because I wasn't aware we'd moved that out that way, but okay.
So
That's probably something we need to talk to Ted about.
Yeah. Okay. So that's where we are today. I get it. The prices went up and we do need to revisit that GIS plan and see what we need to do about getting that funded properly. So,
right.
Yeah.
And we had it, but then things
I know.
came in and we had to shift money. So
somehow-
yeah, I apologize that it wasn't clear that we were shifting the microsurfacing from 2022 to 2023 set aside funding, but I guess that's
Well, I knew we were shifting it. I thought there was enough money to still do what we had planned to do, but
Gotcha.
obviously that
Gotcha.
was my
Yeah, it
bad
was just-
assumption.
I also
was,
made that assumption. I
it was
knew that we were
miscommunication.
moving and waiting to sign the contract this year, but I thought it was just so that we could get the numbers right on paper for the budget.
Okay. Well, I see what you're saying. So thank you.
Yep.
All right.
So if no other questions, I will let you move on.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Ann.
So the next is city attorney. We have some applications, and I guess what we need to talk about is how we're going to move forward.
Yes. Okay. Well, so on your desk, you've got some different types of applications. So what I thought I'd do is kind of cover a little bit. So again, the history is up until 2016, we had a part-time city attorney. And we were paying at that point $90,000 a year and got 20 hours worth of work. And then in 2017, we brought on a full-time city attorney. Again, that was new, didn't have a lot of experience at 93. So it didn't cost us much to get that. But again, the city attorney was pretty new to local government work. And so had to kind of do some training in there. Our previous city attorney left at about a total compensation about $165,000 is what we had budgeted. So that tells you how much you have available. So what do other cities do? So Valley Center, they pay $10,000 a year and they have a retired attorney. And they don't get a lot of hours for that, obviously. El Dorado, they hire a law firm. They pay $72,000 a year. Of course, Towanda and Benton are small. They pay about $12,000 a year for an attorney. Andover uses Triplett Wolf and Garrettson, which is a firm, and they pay about $36,000 a year. Hayesville uses Mentor Pollock, which is a firm, at $48,000. Park City has a retired attorney that works about 20 hours a week for $65,000. Both Newton and Derby have full-time city attorneys. Newton pays $141,000. Derby pays $135,000. So, so option one is to look at a firm, and you have 3 of those on your desk. I sent out 10 RFPs to attorneys that were recommended to me by numerous people that actually do local government law. Of course, the benefit is that you pay a retainer, and then there's no benefits or anything like that. So The three that you have to look at, one is Minter Pollock, which they do Hayesville. They proposed $97,000 a year. Josh, which is one of the partners, would be our city attorney. They would attend all the city council meetings. They would attend workshops. They'd have hours at City Hall 1 day a week, and then an additional 8 hours. So basically 16 hours a week. And they have been the city attorney for Hayesville for the last 6 years. The second firm is Triplett Wolf and Garrettson. So you remember some of these other cities are using these same attorneys. They were at $48,000 a year. Andrew Kovar would be the city attorney. They would attend he would attend all council meetings, attend workshops as requested. They would have office hours 1 day a month. And they could provide other assistance for anywhere from $170 to $415 an hour. The only caveat to Triplett Wolf and Garrettson is they also do bond counsel work. And so they would want to be our bond counsel. And they are the city attorney for Hillsborough, Keachai, and a number of other cities. And then the last one we received was Jantz Law Office, and they proposed $97,000 per year. Brad Jantz, which is the owner, would be the city attorney. They would attend all regular meetings, workshops as requested, office hours, and then they can provide additional assistance at $85 to $125 an hour. And again, they would be basically 16 hours a week. And they're city attorney for a lot of smaller cities. You can see all of them there. So the other option would be a part-time attorney, because you saw some of the cities do part-time. So we put an put an advertisement out for a part-time city attorney. We received two. One of them you have on your desk. The only issue with that one is that they couldn't start till March of 2024. So we'd have to do something for a year. The other one is part-time at another city, and his said he's interested, but I haven't talked to him yet about if he could do 20 hours a week and what the fee would be. But a part-time attorney, typically you're going to pay in the $50,000 range for 20 hours a week. Of course, they'd be at council meetings. They'd be at City Hall a couple days a week. You may or may not offer benefits. You know, someone that's retired, they may ask for benefits because they retired early or something like that. So it could be $50,000 to $70,000 for 20 hours a week. And then, of course, the last option will be replace the city attorney with a full-time city attorney. And of course, they're here 40 hours a week, can be used for any projects. They may need some training. Again, when we looked at what staff needed, they were looking at maybe a couple days a week max. Of course, with a full-time person, you got pay and benefits that increase every year. We posted both the full-time and part-time positions on February 15th. We advertised on Indeed, Washburn Law, Wichita Bar, City Attorney Listserv, et cetera, et cetera. We had 4,700 views on Indeed. And then we said that the first review would be March 8th. And the reason we did that is so people would apply, because if you don't put that, then they think, well, I'll wait a month or whatever. And we received 6 applications. You have those. So the one that just I picked out that probably be a leading candidate has city attorney experience. Probably based on what their current salary is, probably going to have to start at about $120 a year. You know, the benefits depends on the insurance needs, but probably looking at about $170 for total. And of course, they're going to be here. They're going to attend all the council meetings, workshops. They'll be at City Hall. And then, like I said, we had 6 applications. So again, this is just kind of the role of the city attorney. You all know what that is. And again, before we put out the information, I asked city staff, what do you need for a city attorney as far as legal work? And they were saying on average 4 to 8 hours a week is what they actually use for city attorney work. And this is what you were looking for. And what I need in a city attorney is someone that reviews contracts and legal documents, answers zoning questions, assists with personnel problems or terminations, and then helps interpret the handbook. So the question for you is, you have 3 options, and what would you like to pursue? You have the firms. You're going to spend roughly $90,000 to get 15, 16 hours a week. Part-time, you'll get 20 hours a week. You're going to get experience, may want some benefits, probably going to be in the $70,000, $80,000 range, but you get 20 hours. And then, of course, the full-time, they'll have to learn Bel Air and some additional responsibilities that we have. You know, what are all of the things that we would want a city attorney to do? And basically, we're looking at an additional $60,000 to go from a part-time firm, whatever, to full-time. So happy to answer this questions, or really just get your direction on how you'd like to proceed. I'm sure either way you go, you're going to want to do some interviews and such.
Ty, go ahead.
Just a question. Jackie had given us a list of some people she knew, and I see a couple of them are here. Did the others, did we contact them and they just didn't come through with anything?
Yeah, Jackie contacted everybody that she had mentioned,
Okay.
And told them to go apply on Indeed. I didn't reach out to anybody.
Okay.
I did have a couple call me, and I think they're the ones that applied. It's just to ask some questions, but
Okay.
but she did reach
Okay.
out to them.
Thank you.
Ty, I was looking, I want to make sure I heard what you said. You said your top preference is the full-time attorney with the city experience? Or if we went with full-time, that's who you would prefer?
So yes, if you went to full-time, if there was one applicant in there that I thought would be a good match if you were looking at full-time.
Okay.
She has city attorney experience.
Ty, there was a big difference on the 3 firms. One of them was only like under 50,000. Was that because they didn't put in everything that we requested, or is that just what they thought we needed?
The one that was I think it was 40, it was at 48, Triple Wolf and Garrettson. 2 reasons. One is they only had office hours 1 day a month, where I requested office hours 1 day a week. So there's less hours, but they also will not do it unless they can be bond counsel, because obviously they make money being bond counsel as well. So that's the other piece of that.
And I guess my thought on that is we've been extremely happy, I think, with our bond counsel. I'm not personally super interested in a change there.
Yeah, I don't think so. Just looking through this, I'm thinking, and surprisingly, I actually know some of these folks, but I'm thinking maybe we'd like, or I'm going to suggest we set up an interview committee to look at the full-time ones, and I'm not saying we interview all of them. Maybe we go through this stack and say, hey, we want to call these ones in for interview, and just start from there and see where that takes us.
My thought on this is, I've thought about the firm option and the hiring someone option. The more I think about it, the more I feel inclined to hire somebody that's really dedicated to Bel Air. I think the staff and the citizens get a lot of value from somebody who really understands Bel Air, knows the issues that are unique to Bel Air, and isn't juggling 10 different cities trying to keep everything straight, and can really be dedicated and embrace the vision and culture of the city here. And so I like the option of hiring somebody. I'm not sure on the full-time or part-time spectrum what makes sense there. It seems like we might be able to do okay with the part-time attorney based on kind of some of the numbers that you gather. We also may find that as we're growing and we're experiencing a lot of interesting things and exciting things happening here in Bel Air, that need will grow more than we expect, and we may wish that we'd hired somebody full-time. So I like the mayor's suggestion of forming an interview committee. Personally, I'd be happy to contribute to that. I almost think we should interview both the full-time and the part-time candidates, and really, I really see if there's anybody that stands out as somebody that would be a great candidate that contributes here to Bel Air.
So I might go along with that, except the issue there with the part-time is you got one applicant and they're not available till next year.
Thought Ty said there was one.
He didn't have
Yeah,
a second application.
I've got another one that's interested, but he just reached out to me a couple days ago, and it was last week, and said that he was interested. And I sent him a job description. Said, "Okay, call me," because he didn't have his phone number in there. I just got his email, and so I think I could get a hold of him and say, "Hey, if you're interested, we'd like to interview you." So that would be one part-time, but there's only just two.
There's just two part-timers, and the one is not available for a year.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, which probably won't work for us.
Right. That's not going to work for us, but that's fine. If this person is available for an interview, I think we could accommodate that. But I think I'd like to set up an interview committee
Is
start
he
that
local?
process.
How's he gonna swing part-time?
Yeah. So he's, I don't want to get in, these are always tough and open meetings, but
Right.
he's got local government experience, retired from local government as an attorney, and is a city attorney at another city, part-time.
Okay, that might be workable.
So would have time, I think, to work 20 hours a week if he wanted.
Ty, just to clarify, sorry, I was trying to jump in there a couple times. The one part-time that we have a resume is the one that said they cannot start till 2024.
Right.
Because I think just looking at the resume, I think there are some reasons to visit with him again, just highlighting a couple of things. I think it would be good to sit down and talk about him as a candidate potentially if that date has any flexibility.
I did ask him that because I thought maybe the question would come up, and I was actually curious as to, is there an opportunity that the assumption is that he's going to retire and then would come to work part-time. Could he work a deal where he worked less hours where he's at now and then pick up, have a few less hours, maybe some evenings or weekends, and based on his retirement system, he can't do that. He's got to stay full-time there.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, that's what Capers does to us. Their rules. So I'm going to suggest is that we have two council members, myself, be that interview committee, including and you as well. And so, but if we have more council members, we got a quorum, then we have meeting issues, open meeting issues. I'm not opposed to having more. It's just that becomes an open meeting issue. So
that's right. Yep.
Mr. Mayor, my other thought, just from the list of other cities, is why is Bel Air? It looked like there's a lot of cities as big as Andover even that use it part-time, or you have quite a bit less cost than we do in an attorney. Why do we think Bel Air needs more? Is it because of Integra?
And that's a good question that, I've struggled with, and that's what I posed to you. And that's why we looked at that. Is you're right. Those other cities, really, they just show up for council meetings and then may get a call or an email from staff once in a while. So they don't use their attorney near as much as we do. And again, that's where, when I asked staff, I said, Jackie was here full time. And so you have someone full time, then you're going to go to him for a lot of things. And I said, what really is the legal? I mean, that you need an attorney if and that's where it came to, 4 hours a week is probably what we really need, true legal advice. Now they see her more because she was around. So they'd go ask her questions, especially when my door was shut and I was on the phone, and they would go to her for questions like that. So
there's the idea of induced demand, where if you have the capacity available to you, you will use it. And that I don't see that actually as a bad thing. I wonder what outcomes, have been better for the city of Bel Air because, we consulted with somebody when maybe if we were racking up $400 an hour bill, we would have been reluctant to go knock on the door or make the phone call. That's a little bit of what I worry about with the pay per hour model is you're disincentivizing using a service that's probably really good to go use.
And just to tell you, I talked with the chief, and this is not recent. This is some time ago. He told me, you know, the deal is with a full-time attorney, when he has a question that he needs an answer on, he can go there and get it pretty quick. I mean, if she's not available right now, she's available. Well, this was in the case of Jackie. She would be available fairly quickly. He said when they had part-time attorney, sometimes it would be 2 or 3 days before you get an answer. And that's not good in his line of work to have to wait that long. Sometimes it was much more urgent than that. So it created some problem. He understands it. He gets it that if you had a part-time, that's what it is. But that was the experience he had.
So Mayor, would you like to, do you want to have it on the next agenda to appoint a committee, interview committee, or do you just want to do that?
I would, if we need to have an agenda, we can, or just create the committee here. You know,
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you. You can, you can create a
I heard
committee.
Mr. Smith said he would like to do it. I don't know if anybody else said they would like to do it, but okay, so Ms. Hamburg says she would like to, and I think that's it. We got it right there.
And then-
all we're doing is interviewing and making a recommendation to the council anyway. So I don't know. It has to be really a formal committee, does it?
Right. No, you can create that. And
Okay.
then, you know, if the committee says we like a certain person, then certainly the council could do an executive session and interview that person.
Right.
And
Mhm.
make sure that everybody's comfortable with that.
Okay.
And then we'll look at both the part-time and full-time.
Right. And we'll let you set up the times and stuff. But I think in the case of Mr. Smith, evenings are best for him. I don't.
Yeah, I think we can work that out.
Right. Okay. So, but I have to have it done here next month. So, no, that's good.
Okay. That
All right.
sounds like a
So-
plan.
All right. Thank you.
So then continuing on the staffing, some of you have been very nice to ask, knowing that Integra is a possibility and the things that are going on with that. And we just talked about the issues that we're facing as staff is how do we get ramped up on things? We don't want to go too far because we don't know that they're coming. But some of you have asked, well, how can I help? And so what I wanted to cover just very quickly is that, you know, this is back from your council retreat, what everybody's roles are. And of course, your role is to hire a city manager that monitors the financial conditions. And you did a great job of that. So you have that covered. Community leader, you want to be involved in articulating the community desires. That's our CIP. Collaborate, mobilizing resources, address problems, contribute to strong community ties. But the biggest piece is the lobbying. That's where we need your help. So where we need your help is the local lobbyists, REAP, K254, WAMPO, SCAC. I know a lot of you go to some of those or all of those, and it's important that everybody in those organizations know what's happening in Bel Air. And because they can support us on things, especially WAMPO and 254 and stuff. So it's important that you go to those, that people know that you're from Bel Air and what all the issues are that are facing us. And they most of them will. The other piece is the county lobbying. So these are all the county commissioners, and we all know Pete Meitzner because he represents us, but you need to know every one of them, and they need to know you. Because it takes, just like you, it takes 3 of them to get anything done. So Pete can't do it by himself. Now, he's a great champion and he works very hard for us, but it's important that they all know us because we're going to be going in the next few months to create a TIF and they've got to approve it. And so it's going to take 3 of them at least. We want all 5 to approve it, but it's important that you know them and they know you. And like I said, all of them, not just one of them. And they go to SCAC, I think, and some of the meetings. So whenever you have the opportunity to talk with any one of them or all of them, don't just because we know Pete's on our side, but we've got to get the other 2 votes at least to get some of our stuff, our TIF through. And then we need you at the state level. So this is the Spark Committee. We've got a grant to them for about $11 million to put water and sewer in around the Sunflower Commerce Park. That's big for that development. We need their votes to approve that. So we need you to know them, and they need to know us. We all know about the squeaky wheel. In fact, we deal with it here. You know, things that get done sometimes in the city are because we hear about them all the time, or you hear about them. And so they get moved up on the priority list. So it's important that not just Ty, again, he's one vote. We need to get the rest of these. And then we need state officials. So this is the previous KDOT secretary. Of course, the governor. This is the Department the Kansas Department of Commerce secretary. They need to know us, or they need to know you. And in your packet is the contact information for them, their emails and phone numbers. So again, they're going to look at you more than they look at us, because we're just employees of you. You have the same constituents. The people that elected you elected them, or the majority of them did. So they're going to look at you, and they're going to take your emails and calls much more seriously than us, because we're just staff. So that's why it's important that they hear from you, and not just once, but often. Again, they need to know when they see you, oh, he's from Bel Air, or she's from Bel Air, or they get a call or an email. Oh, okay, Justin's emailing me again. He just emailed me last month or last week. He's emailing me again. Where are we at on this? Because that's what happens. We know that's what happens. And then again, our state legislatures, like the mayor said, each one of these have came through. Senator Moran hasn't came through, but we know he's supporting the Integra project and going to try to get us some money.
And I did talk with him on Monday. So
good.
I saw.
Yep.
Okay.
So, they need to hear from us or hear from you about the issues. And again, they're aware of it, but the more they hear from us, that it keeps moving up on their radar that, okay, Bel Air, I keep hearing from all these people at Bel Air. Well, can we do something, because I'm tired of hearing from them? I mean, that's the way things get done. So that's where we need your help. So again, my role is the administration, keep good staff, encourage efficiency, and to create a team to get things done. And that's where we were talking a little bit earlier, John was talking about, is what are we doing for the roads, the infrastructure and stuff. So what I'm doing is I'm working with all the engineering companies that we deal with, and they all have different expertise and have helped us in different ways. So for example, PEC is completing our master water and sewer study. So we hired them several months ago, before we knew about Integra, to look at our whole system to see, where we need improvements, how's it working, what do we need to do. So I thought, now that we know that Integra is coming, I went back to him and I said, okay, we need to expand that study, because we now may have, instead of, and we know that Integra is 1 million gallons a day of water and sewer. That's what they've said. But phase 2 is another million. So now we're up to 2 million. And then some of their suppliers that actually make the chips use more water than they. So we may have to consider in the next 5 years to increase to 10 million gallons a day of sewer. To put that in perspective, the city today as a whole uses 365 million gallons. So, or 1 million gallons a day. So we're going to 10 times that. So we've got to really think about what are all of our options. And so they're going to look at, and I said, throw everything on the table. What's happening at CCUA? What can we do there? What about Wichita? El Dorado has been on us and Wichita and everybody else because they have a lake and to get water to us. Maybe that's an option. Maybe now's the time. Do we build our own plant? Again, they're going to throw everything. I asked them to throw everything on the table for you to think about. So they're going to identify the cost. They're going to help us with negotiations because they deal with all these cities. So if we need to negotiate something with El Dorado or Wichita or something, they'll help us with that. They're setting up a meeting with the acting KDOT secretary in the next week or two. And that's, again, I'm going to share our needs. And then we're setting up a call with the DeSoto city manager to talk about what have they done and who's helped them and where they get their funding. So that's what PEC is doing for us. Burns and Mac, they just finished a complete audit of the water and sewer plant. So they know everything about that plant. So they're going to be using the information they have to help with PEC. They're also setting up a meeting with the previous KDOT, because right now there's an interim KDOT secretary. They know the previous. Well, the previous one, Julie, still has a lot of contacts, state, federal. And so we're going to set up a meeting with her. And they're going to set up a meeting with the KDHE secretary to talk about several issues. So that's what they're bringing to the table. Trans Systems was hired by Integra to assess the transportation needs that Integra is going to have. They're also looking at what needs to happen on 254. And so KDOT has said that they are going to pull Greenwich, Rock, and Webb out of the corridor management plan because we don't have time to wait for that, because that's going to take a year to finish that up.
Just a little piece of information about that. Mike Moriarty did not know about that this morning or this afternoon's WAMPO meeting. I didn't tell him it either, but he doesn't know about that. He said he thinks that they're going to accelerate the Garver study.
And that may be because that's who said that they were going to pull that off. Yeah. Was Mike.
Well, Mike who said that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Now, again, he didn't tell me that. I heard that from Trans Systems.
Okay. Right.
So again, there may be some lost in translation there. I don't know, but that was the name that was thrown out by Trans Systems that said that they were going to do that. Well,
if they're talking to him, then that's the good thing. So
yeah,
it's because he's the guy.
But anyway, so Trans System is going to work very closely with KDOT on the interchanges that Integra is going to need. So we'll work with them on, okay, if KDOT in fact hires them to do that, then we'll work with them on what do we got to do with rock and such. And then of course, Garver, they're handling all of our internal streets because we can't forget about them. We got 45th Street, we got 53rd Street, we got Rock. And so they're helping, working with Ann to keep all those rolling. And of course, they're doing the 254 study as well. So I'm working with each of the engineering firms that we work with now to make sure that we're getting to the point where we know what's got to happen without spending a lot of money, because that's a concern, is we can't go out and engineer everything and then find out that Integra's not coming. So we're trying to get as far along as we can and understand through studies or whatever what needs to be done, so that if they get awarded, then we can say, okay, it's time to move on to design build or whatever it may be. Yeah. So what do we need your help? Is staffing. So this is my hours, and I'm, with Integra, I'm working 45 to 50 hours. So I need some help. So one place I think, and what we're going to do is, again, the tough thing is we're looking at, your budget's going to be June, July. By August, you're going to want to adopt a budget. We may not know till July or August if Integra comes. So Ted's really thrilled that he gets to do two budgets, because he's going to have to look at what happens if Integra comes, what if they don't. But if Integra comes, we're going to have to hire a marketing person. Tristan, again, is handling communications and HR. Melissa's our city clerk. They have a part-time person. They're keeping track of all their hours and what they're doing. So when you ask, well, what do they do? I'll have that information for you. But the issue is, the reason we need that is because Integra is going here. This is all set for development, and this is all for suppliers. We need to make sure the suppliers come here. they don't have to come here. They could go anywhere along the 254 corridor. They could go in Keachah. They could go in Wichita. So it's important to us that they come here. So we need to make sure that we're marketing and doing it right. Everything the mayor laid out marketing wise, what our last workshop, he was right on that. We need to be doing all that. And what's sad is how many cities our size does their mayor have to make a brochure? We should be doing that. That shouldn't be his job. He's nice doing it, but again, those are things that we need a person to be doing for us. What I want to do is bring Ted. Right now, Ted has assistant city manager in his title, but he also has finance director and IT. And so we do contract IT out, but he has to manage that. He always gets the calls first typically, and then it goes to IT. So we got a city clerk. We got 4 clerks. So again, to reduce my hours, he needs to be full-time assisting me, not just doing all the other jobs. And so we need to replace him with a finance director. Code enforcement, we hired Jay, and what I hoped wouldn't happen happened, and that is he just filled the holes. He's out doing inspections because we have so much going on that he's filling in as an inspector. He has the experience and the knowledge to do it, so he's out filling that hole. We built 350 new homes last year. That's 1 a day. And you got to go out there and inspect those several times throughout the process. So that's Keith. That's one person. So that's why Jay is now out doing inspections. We've got, if Integra comes, that's a 1 million square foot building. It's in our jurisdiction. We got to inspect it. And so the other thing that I put on Jay was to help us with project management. We've got all of these subdivisions going in. We've got Woodlawn. We've got all the things that you all know about, and we need to make sure everything is getting done, when and who's doing it and all that. So I asked him to do that, and he's helping us with that. So it's one of those things where he's filling holes. But if Integra comes, he's going to need help because we can't be out there doing all those inspections. Of course, the police officer situation, you're familiar with that. We're down on police officers. We may have to look at another engineer. Ann's job is to review plats and review the infrastructure. But she also helps with public works. That's what she's here doing tonight. She's helping me trying to figure out what infrastructure do we need to be working on. So that's got her running in different directions. She's managing all of our current street projects and water line projects. That's what we were talking about. So that's something we may have to look at. So really, I just wanted to throw that out there. There's no discussion, but I wanted you to be aware that, and we talked about it when the possibility of Integra coming, that it's going to increase our workload, and it is. But I just want you to be aware that that's where, when we talk about how can you support us, it's helping us with that. Because what I'm afraid of, if we don't get people the help they need, people are going to get burnt out and they're going to leave. Mm-hmm. And we're in that market where it's easy to leave.
Can we bring in some of those people you talked about, like the finance, and I kind of lost track now. But anyway, you had like 3 positions there, and inspector. Can we bring those in as contract to help now? And then if we actually get Integra, we could hire somebody on?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good, something we could do in the short term.
Because I hate to hire somebody and then have to turn around and say, okay, we're done building houses.
Yeah.
Well, I think with inspectors specifically, it's a little tricky because that demand can go real high and real low, real fast. And there are some cities that I know of that primarily do that through contract inspection. I don't know that that's a good idea for us, but it might be worth exploring from an augmentation perspective.
And the problem we run into is who would we hire? It'd be Sedgwick County, and they're struggling getting enough staff, so they're understaffed. In fact, we had a situation where Keith was on vacation, and we asked him if they could help cover, and they said no because they were understaffed.
Is that who other cities are contracting through? They're not going with individuals directly.
Yep.
It's through the county.
Yep.
I
Like
thought we
small
had-
cities that may have 20 or 50 houses, they'll just hire the county.
I thought we had a
metro area
agreement
building.
with Park City to back us up on.
Park City and Keachai do.
Yeah.
But again, it's based on if they've got
If
the
they're
time
available.
to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. And we try to do that as much as we can
Sure.
because then we don't have to pay for that.
Well, this would be another place if we found a retired person that wants to work a few hours, we could bring them on contract and
Yeah.
maybe bring 2 people on contract at halftime instead of 1 full-time. But
And that would be something to look at, is see if there is somebody that's retired or somebody that's interested in part-time. Yep. So that was all I wanted to talk about on staffing. And I think our next one was curb painting. Is that right, Mayor?
Yeah, that's what we got on the agenda. So, yeah.
So of course, we always want to talk about the policy question. So who benefits, who pays, who repairs and replaces? What if someone doesn't want it? Can it be customized? That's going to be a question. Can I put a Wildcat on there or Shocker on there or something? And who oversees the project? So those are your policy questions. What do the codes say? The codes say that the curbs are part of the right of way. And so the city controls those. It also affects how signage on right of ways are handled, because we talk about signage and right of ways, and so the curb is part of the right of way. So that's, and the signage piece of it is, well, what if I want to put a shocker on mine? Well, that's a good question, and how are you going to handle that? So you'd want to be uniform, and you'd probably have to revise the codes to allow this and to set how uniform it is. So again, the question of what's it cost? Well, if the city were to do it, we've got 3,700 addresses, 3,700 utility customers. So each one of those customers have an address. I guesstimated at $15 per address. And the way I came about this is a couple years ago, somebody stopped by when I was out in the front and said, "Hey, you want us to do this?" And it's $20. So I figured, well, if you did that many, it's maybe 15, or who knows, maybe you can get it for 10. I don't know. I just threw a number in. That's where I came up with it. So that's $55,000 to do. So you'd want to budget that $55,000 every 2 to 3 to 4 years, because it's going to have to be repainted. And then if we're building 350 houses a year, you'd have to budget about $5,000 every year to paint the new houses that come on. So the pros is, it does look nice. It's easy to see when you're driving down the street. You see all them on the curbs. And if they all look the same, it would be very uniform. And not to be the Debbie Downer here, but I did come up with several cons. And of course, you got to repaint them every few years. If they're not repainted, they're going to peel and fade. We'll get complaints on that. Of course, we got to do the new homes every time they come in. Public safety, I asked the chief, does that really help? And they said, well, they usually look for the numbers on the house. Just drive down, look at the house instead of the curbs. But not that they wouldn't use those. What if the homeowner doesn't want it? We have homeowners that we deal with all the time, and some would say this is great, and some would say I don't want that on my curb. The street sweeper does wear them down. They've got pretty strong brushes on them, and part of that is to clean out the curbs. Last 3 to 4 years. What happens after a year or two and it starts fading, and then we get complaints? Mine's faded. Can you come repaint it? And then the issue of, well, I want a Wildcat on mine, which I know Tyler would do. He'd be the first one that says that. So we got to deal with Tyler then. So that's kind of my 2 cents. And so you guys can talk it through and tell us what you want us to do.
Well, my 2 cents is the city should not pay for it. It should only be black on white. We should not allow any other icons with it. Otherwise, we open it up to all kinds of things that could be on there. And there will be all kinds of complaints because nobody will agree on what's proper to be out there.
Yeah, after seeing the reviews of information on this, I don't think we should do it. I just think it's not something that's is that good of a benefit. I mean, you're going to end up having to change the code. Right now, the code says the addresses has to be on the house. You're going to change that to say, well, it's got to be on the curb. Really? Okay, that's going to, like you said, it's going to fade, and the homeowner's going to have to maintain that if the homeowner wants it. So it's I don't think it's a great idea. I appreciate you looking into it, but because it was a question that came up, and I thought, well, let's see. But
I think I agree with John in that I don't think the city should pay for it or do it. I do think we should change the code so that it's allowable for when people want to do it, and or the person drives by and they say, "Hey, would you like this done for $20?" Sure, we shouldn't necessarily have that disallowed, and that's all we should do is make it allowable.
Are you going to set a standard for what it needs to be if it is allowed?
Yeah, allowable, black and white, no logos.
You gotta have to state. You have to state the size and those kinds of things. Yeah. Okay.
Probably. Yeah, they'd probably be 4 or 5 inch letters, whatever fits on the curb. Numbers. I don't think we have any letters.
Don't put letters on.
Yeah.
Ty, is this something that other cities have a code written out for, and does it require the company to pull a permit to do it, to spray it on the curb? I don't know how that works. I'm just asking.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to look into that and see if they would need a permit or something.
See, then you're going to get into what type of paint is acceptable, because paints are coming all kinds of grades.
Sure.
And some won't stay to that cement, right? Some will.
You'll have to come up with some sort of spec. I do agree with John and Justin on the city shouldn't pay for it. We've got a lot of other street repair projects that we could be using that money for. But I also agree that we shouldn't disallow it. So if we're going to allow it, we would need to have a code that's clear to address that.
Right now, I think I understand that it's disallowed, but it's pretty common, and we're not enforcing it, and that's something that really annoys me.
And I also would say that the way I take this is this would not replace the need for the address on the home. This would be in addition to the requirement of having it on
You
the
may
home.
do this, but
Yeah,
you got to do that.
Yep.
That's the way I see it too. It's got to still be on the house.
Yep.
Okay, well, we'll work on, I understand maybe some type of policy revision, or not a policy, but a code revision, and we'll put something together for you and bring it back for discussion.
Okay. All right, I think we're ready to move on to trash along streets.
Okay.
Emily says our streets are getting trashy.
Yep.
So,
So again, we look at the policy. Is it a priority? Who's responsible for it? Who's going to pay for it? Who's going to benefit? And who's going to oversee it? So those are the questions. It does say in our city codes under UPOC and the standard traffic ordinance, you guys approved those, that it's under littering. People can't litter. So, is there a cost? Well, if we did volunteers, we probably provide trash bags, maybe some vests, things like that, $1,000 or something. Or we could contract the work out. Who would we want to do that? How much would we pay them? We could, a lot of times it ends up on the city's responsibility list. So the city was going to have to do it. We'd have to look at a part-time person. And of course, police can enforce it. But there's a cost to having them out there watching the right of way. So volunteers, that's one option. We really need volunteers once a week or once a month or something like that. We do have Sunrise. They have some of their kids come out and they volunteer, but that's once a year. So it's great, and they do a couple miles, but it looks great when they do it. But that's once a year. We need to know what the organizations we could have volunteer. You know, who could do that, and then who's going to coordinate? Is that, you know, the city? What we typically do with Sunrise, of course, those are kids. The police will go out there with cars to make sure that they're safe. Public Works goes along, picks up the trash bags with them and stuff like that. So there are some still responsibilities of the city. Another option we talked about was community service. So the judge would need to sentence them to community service. And of course, the downside is we would lose revenues, because instead of fining them, we make them do community service. And maybe that's okay. It may not be a lot. Maybe that's good. We'd have to know how many people and how often could they do it. Then again, who's going to coordinate that? Is that Public Works? Is that police? And then, of course, we don't have a city attorney here, but I'm sure the city attorney would ask, well, what about liability if they would get hit or, you know, turn an ankle or something while they're doing it? And maybe that's fine. Maybe there isn't any concern with that. And then, of course, if you wanted us to do it, the city to do it, we'd need a vehicle. We'd need someone to be out to doing it. Or, you know, is there companies that would do it? What would they pay? That kind of stuff. Again, littering is illegal. And then we would need an officer to go out. And again, with any kind of crime, you got to catch them. So they would have to put up cameras or, you know, set along the roads and watch for somebody that's throwing out the trash and pull them over, and then do the investigation and those types of things. So again, those are just some of the comments and questions I had just to start the conversation.
So question I had thinking through this is, when is our city curbside cleanup? What date is that? Do you remember?
There's two of them, and one's coming up in May, and the other one's usually in October.
I was just thinking of an idea, and maybe this is just too crazy, but we have multiple civic organizations in this community. We have churches, we have HOAs, we have Lions Club, we have Chamber of Commerce. What if we just put out a citywide clean up the litter day and do it and coincide it with the curbside cleanup? So maybe it's the day before, so they have it all picked up and it's there at the curb ready for the trash to be picked up or something like that. And it's everybody in the community go out and clean up the trash in their area. Okay. And get a few of the groups to go along 53rd or where the right of ways of the thoroughfares, because, you know, you got to have somebody do that too. Just an idea to say, what if we did something like that? I mean, it would get people invested into the community more, because they're putting a little bit of sweat equity into it, but it's not overly burdensome. And then maybe that will help bring some awareness to the issue as well. Sure. Because when I throw that cup out, somebody does have to go pick that up, you know, or the beer bottle or whatever it is that they're throwing out.
Sure. Okay.
So just an idea. I don't know if that's something we want to do.
Mayor, I like that idea. I actually also like the idea of, you know, we have a tree board, we have a utility advisory board, we have several boards, we have a task force for roads now. To me, this feels like something that maybe we could create a board that would lead that effort. It wouldn't be something that was burdened on staff. Maybe it could be led by a volunteer and coordinated through the Bel Air Rec Center or whatever activity or event that we're hosting. It feels like an opportunity that there's some people in our community that are really passionate about the environment, that this could be an opportunity for them to volunteer and improve our city in a positive way. So I like that idea.
That was my first thought, that it could be a subset of the tree board.
Yeah.
We already had the model with Sunrise, so I think a lot of those questions could be answered. How does Sunrise do it? You know, we follow along. And the only other thing I'd add is I think contractors need to be involved. 53rd Street's terrible, and it's pretty obvious it's coming from contractors.
Yeah. And I know that the city manager has had contractors go back out there and clean up some of that stuff, and it might be time to do it again, because especially along the Woodlawn Oliver corridor there, where there's still some construction going on, there's a lot of trash over there in that hedgerow.
Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Hammond.
Ty, thank you for all the information. I want to just kick off a discussion. Being a limited government person, I don't want to burden you guys. I don't want to hire more police. I appreciate all the background information. When I was driving home last Tuesday night, I thought I used the term community service, and I was thinking like National Honor Society, IB students. And I thought, I wonder if you took it as like restitution. And sure enough, you did. And I appreciate that you're way ahead of me. So I appreciate all that. I'm really on the same track. I have a Lions board meeting tomorrow. I'm going to bring this up with them. I don't know. Creating a board is one idea, but we've got a lot of boards and organizations that I think they might like the opportunity. Like tree board was one I was thinking of too, because it's something that will probably need to be ongoing more than twice a year, but twice a year would be an awfully good start. So I appreciate that. I think now I just need to go back to our respective organizations we're involved with and kind of see what they're interested in doing.
So just to clarify and just a comment also, I think the tree board is more in their mind, just in my conversation with them, and I don't want to speak for the tree board, it's just my interpretation of what I've heard from them. They look at themselves as more advisory and that they don't really take on any activity and go do something. So I'm not sure that they would take that on. I don't want to speak to them and say they won't do that, but just kind of be aware. But, if you did this like citywide cleanup and you involve all these organizations, not one, not two, but you tell them all, we want you to Church of Resurrection, Sunrise Christian Academy, Gospel Assembly, the HOAs, we want you to please pick up and do this for us on this day. This is our citywide litter cleanup day. We've decided that we want to do that. I know it's a different approach than a board that's a permanent board or whatever that is. And I get that. I'm just trying to get really the entire community involved in this.
I don't disagree with you, but we have full boards, and
Yeah.
it felt like something that if we want it to sustain, we'd need somebody organizing it and keeping it sustainable.
And maybe
the committee
that
helps.
from there that comes out of there. I don't know. I don't have that vision. I mean, I don't have the crystal ball either.
I think Tyler's right. We need a small group, 2 or 3 people maybe, that would ramrod and coordinate all the other groups and let them know what day. And the day before the citywide cleanup's perfect. Maybe do it on a Friday. Trash bags are out there Saturday morning. We can get the schools involved that way. They may have some students that need to go do something because they've done something they shouldn't, kind of deals.
Like a detention?
Well, I cleaned gum out from under tables once when I was a kid. So,
well, what if we, Emily, you could talk to Lions, and what if I send out an email to all of our boards and say, would any of you be interested in taking the lead? You talk to the Lions. Maybe we'll put something out on social media and say, churches, schools, anybody interested in taking the lead? This is something that the council would like to do, and then see if we get some replies of, a church or the Lions or UAC come back and said, yeah, we'll take the lead. We'll, like John said, we'll force this thing through and we'll get a great cleanup day.
It also could be something we might run by the chamber too.
could,
Because to me, I really like your vision of the entire community embracing it. I just think there has to be a central person that's championing it
That's fine.
to keep it sustained. But I really like the idea of making everybody involved and invited.
One follow-up question I had was, I know we have an Adopt the Park program that you guys provide the trash bags and things like that. Is that something, how active is that program, by the way? Are there?
That's really not.
Really not. Okay.
Yep. Because that's another option is you adopt a street or, that's kind of that.
But I get the liability question, and I don't want to
Yeah.
get into that either. So.
yeah, that's something we definitely need an answer to.
Yep. Okay. Well, we'll see if we can get somebody to take the lead, and definitely we'll try to reach out to all of the organizations to kind of start building some excitement to, because I think, Mayor, that works great to do it the day before or something of community cleanup day, so they have a place for the trash, because that'll be a concern is what do we do with our trash bags? Because if they leave it along the streets, then we got to go pick them up. So if they'll put it out on community cleanup day, I think that would work pretty good. So, yep, okay.
So your next item was utilities, and I have no idea what that's about.
Yeah, so that was something that Tyler wanted to talk about. And he wanted to look at, you know, when we're talking about water, sewer, all the things that we need to look at there, should we look at like broadband, electric, natural gas? There are cities that do all those things. And so, again, your policy questions are, is that something the city wants to do? Do you want to compete with the private sector? They handle that now. Is there cost savings, and how much? You know, what's the benefit? What are the negatives? You know, and you'd really want to hire a firm to explore those options and what those costs are. So just some of my comments, and I'll let Tyler kind of take on.
Yeah, really where this was born from, and you know, I don't know if this is a wild goose chase. I'm not going to say I know the answer, and that's why the question's been asked. Is as I start thinking about the future of the city, especially when we're contemplating some massive investments that are going to occur in the next potentially in the next couple of years, one of the things that starts to become a little bit more practical financially is when you're thinking about that time horizon of how long of relationship you may have with large industrial users of electricity, particularly the electricity. And only knowing that there are cities in Kansas, this isn't abnormal. There are cities in Kansas that do this. So there is a model for it. There's the question is whether or not it makes sense financially, and if we want to take it on as a city at all, you know, and certainly understand there could be pros and cons. It just feels like when we're thinking about water and wastewater, you know, maybe we add to the mix of, you know, the options that we could put in front of ourselves to decide, is this worth continuing on? I'm sure some amount of data can be provided to just make us decide if it's even worth it from our engineering partners. I don't know which ones would be experts at this, but I'm sure we could find out. But I don't know. It's just up for discussion. You know, obviously this is all very speculative, because if Integra doesn't happen, then we don't have that large industrial user of, or said future development isn't as certain, but it's really contingent on just that large consumer of electricity or consumer of, in this case, broadband was mentioned because I know there are cities that if they have a public utility, if they have electrical distribution, there's a lot of those cities that are also putting broadband on their poles. So that's kind of related to that. If you go to electrical distribution, you might consider, because it's cheaper than putting it underground, putting it on a pole. So this is just kind of my thought process. It isn't something I think we should spend a ton of time on, but I think if we think there's a benefit, we should explore it a little bit just to rule it out. I don't know that I explained it very well, but
what would the key benefit be that you're thinking of? Are you thinking of from a cost savings perspective? Like we might be able to do it cheaper than market alternatives right now?
So I think that the real driver for me would be control over future development. So some of the cities that have taken this on, one of the pros is you cut out one party from the discussion of making a project happen. Oh, they need this. Well, we're the people to talk to, because that's a part of our services that we provide. So part of it is potentially cost savings. I don't know. You'd have to analyze it. But I think the major benefit I see, or pro, would be just having more control over developing out further industrial, you know, base.
I think your risk is going to outweigh any benefit. For example, a couple of years ago when the price of natural gas spiked, there were cities that almost went bankrupt. You got the same kind of liabilities with electric lines. If they fall down, who's going to repair them? We'd have to hire staff to arbitrage electric prices, gas prices. We got better things to do, I think, at least right now, than to try to take on something like this. And I don't think it's anything we ever should take on, actually.
So I'm not really terribly opposed to it. I appreciate some of the things that Mr. Welch said, but you know, McPherson has their utilities. They run their own utilities, and I think I've heard that Valley Center is looking at something like that. the bandwidth that it requires to get something like that off the ground is my real concern here. It would just, that's a tremendous effort that's, you got to have the staff to do. I think our staff is going to, if this Integra thing hits, I think the staff is going to really struggle just to keep alive, keep their head above water.
Sure.
I don't know that the timing is good for us to investigate that. And there's things that have changed in utility industry, and I think this is driven more by the federal government than over the years. I remember when they built the Wolf Creek power plant and then they found out they didn't have enough demand for electricity, that they didn't know what to do with all that extra electricity they built. And now, you know, they can't seem to generate enough electricity to keep up with demand. And it's not just Wolf Creek, it's just that the demand has grown so much. I shouldn't say mushroom, but it's grown so much. And now we're looking at electric vehicles and what that might do to us. And I hope Emily's going to be okay. So timing wise, I don't think it's a good time to do this. You know, maybe in a couple of years, things settle down. Maybe it's something we want to revisit or something to see if there's something to do that makes sense. But yeah, and being a small player in a market is you're just a small fish. You know, that's becomes a problem with, you know, trying to have any pull on things that you need to have pull on. So that's a problem as well. So
Sure.
Anyway, just what my thoughts.
And I'm certainly not suggesting that any or all of those are a good idea. I just think if there were a time to consider it, it's when you've got a 35 to 50 year relationship ahead of you and you can run the analysis on a longer time horizon to make it make sense potentially financially. But the other thing I think of is water and wastewater is obvious. Like, I think there's a real argument to really analyze that, and based on our demand needs going forward. I think where it gets harder is electrical generation, distribution, which are two separate things. You can do one, you don't have to do both.
Mm-hmm.
And then broadband. And it's really just something that, you know, obviously the further we get down the road and grow as a city, the chances of that being fruitful increase. I get that we're small, but it's just something I wanted us to at least think about.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, if we do any of this, you know, water and sewer might be the ones that'd be on the list, but we got to get a better, I know that Ty's already told us what their projected demand for water and sewer is, but I still haven't heard, and I don't know where they are on doing their water management plan, but we need to know what that is.
We need some good data.
Yeah. So that help guides us to what do we really need here. Right. Yeah.
I'm going to say one more thing too. I think usually when we see electric or gas utilities run by the city, it's because the city can't get somebody else to do it well. If this was really a winning proposition, Wichita'd do it, Derby'd do it, Hutchinson would do it, and none of them are doing this.
There are some Kansas cities I understand in eastern Kansas that are looking at this, but I can't tell you who it is because I can't remember. I just remember hearing about they were looking.
I remember
into this.
Pittsburgh.
Was it Pittsburgh doing it?
Was looking at electric, but it got dropped.
Oh, it got
I
dropped.
don't know what the reason was.
I knew somebody out east, and it probably was Pittsburgh. Was doing that. So, yeah.
Your first reason is probably you'd have to go buy all the lines and poles from the existing provider, and
Yeah,
that's a large upfront cost.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, I in a previous city I worked at, we did natural gas. We were a supplier of natural gas, and there, you know, if it's done right and managed well, you can make money off of utilities. We did. The unfortunate thing, which John hit on, was a couple of years ago, all that money they had made, they lost because of that, you know, one instance where the gas prices soared, and so that hurt. And then unfortunately, the other thing that can happen was we had an explosion and it blew up a business and we had a lawsuit, and fortunately no one was killed, but it was the city's gas system. And so that's not a good thing that you want happening. And, you know, it wasn't the city's fault. It was a failure in a pipe, you know, but when when a water line breaks, we just get complaints of water's running down the ditch. But when a gas line breaks and explodes, there's a lot more fallout.
Okay. All right. Anything else we need to discuss this evening? Well, it is Pie Day. There is pie. So enjoy. Anyone that would like to say have some, I think we still have plenty left. So I'm going to call it an evening and wish everybody a good week, and we will see you next Tuesday. Thank you.